Grand Theft Auto 4, we're doing a comparison. On the left, we have Xbox Series X. On the right, we have Xbox 360. So this is a little bit of a different comparison than we normally do because it's not necessarily a huge advancement between the two versions. Both of them are running at 720p. Neither of them have HDR support. But what's really fascinating here is the fact that the 360 version of Grand Theft Auto 4 had an uncapped frame rate. So that means now on Series X, which is on the left, we're actually getting like a locked 60 FPS, and on the right we're getting like 30, 33. So you're going to notice an increased, kind of fluidity and movement to the game from running around, shooting, walking, driving, everything like that. So it actually should be quite an interesting experience seeing the two kind of go off against one another. So obviously the time of day is a little bit different, but that doesn't really quite impact the actual, fluidity levels, because the key of what we're doing here is kind of lining up the setup of where we are and taking a look at the things in the world, obviously from the people, the movement of the character, to the way that the vehicles are, driving past and how they interact with you as a character. It's also very hard to set up an open world to get a similar specific time of day or a specific setup for traffic because it's dynamic and it's different. Some of the characters you'll notice kind of between the two are similar, but again, it's a very different situation regardless. Now with that, these comparisons are kind of hard to put together. So liking the video is great, subscribing is awesome, and I hope you kind of enjoy this sort of tour of the two titles, all the same title going off in two different generations, which is kind of interesting. Now, this was also very hard to line up driving-wise because the cars sort of handle awfully in this, which was fun. Even on the Series X, where we're actually getting a lot nicer of fluidity, where I'm trying to match the movements of the 360 version, it was still very strange to kind of line these up. So some of the driving sequences will be similar, some will be in different areas. The idea is just to show you, the improvement to the actual game in regards to how well it's running, and I hope that's coming across. And yes, we will sync up again in a bit. Just got to kind of give it a little bit of time here, because you're seeing, kind of different streets right now, which is the big thing here. I probably should have gotten a date cam kind of going on the other side, but this test was more about showing off, kind of the improvements to the fluidity and everything like that, and just kind of showing you that, hey, it's a lot slower on the 360 version, whereas on the Series X, you can kind of actually drive fairly smoothly through this world. And I was trying my best to kind of get, the Series X lined up driving-wise, and it took, I think 3 or 4 attempts, and it still was just not... I was not following it easily. I was just like, this is driving me nuts. So I just kind of went with it, and I'm like, this works, this looks fine. And I think it kind of, gives off context between the two. And it's amazing that, I think back in the 360 era, everybody was kind of like, oh, this is great, this is fine, this legendary title, everybody loves it. But yet, nowadays, it's like, wow, this is, such an insanely smooth upgrade. How are we fine with, 30-something FPS, when now it's just, it really does feel great. Honestly, the driving, still a little bit, but what I'm saying is, kind of how you experience the world at a higher frame rate makes quite a difference in regards to how you experience the world and how you move through a game, and it makes it feel insanely better. It's a really nice touch to have, and a really cool feature to be present within the game. So we're going to be syncing back up here again for another bit of a walking sequence, so you can see, kind of that adjustment between the two again, hopefully trying to get this a little bit more lined up between the vehicles. And again, different cars drive different ways and everything like that. It's so tough to do open world games comparison-wise and try to get them, somewhat exact. I just want you to see a similar area and just get an idea of how these cars are sort of moving and flowing through it. And it's just really quite buttery smooth on Series X is the biggest thing. And you can kind of see the, the 360 version. Again, original 360 hardware just sort of chug along at points, which is neat. And it's not too long of a comparison, but I was like, okay, this presents it. It shows you the thing in action. It shows you how the titles are handling things. And I think that's really neat to see that evolution, because there's so many games that were capped, back in the day at 30. So now we're actually seeing the full potential of GTA 4 really on, a console platform, which I think is quite fascinating, and yes, will be splitting off to a bit of a walking segment right here in order to finish it off so you can see, more of just the regular movement throughout the city, which I think is kind of cool. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this look at GTA 4. It's kind of fun to pull it out and kind of do some comparisons with it. And, if you have other ideas for how you'd like to see these scenarios go up against one another again, I'd definitely be up for hearing that. And I noticed on the Series X version, I seem to get so many more calls from my pals, which is so annoying. It was constantly just being like, nope, hang up, hang up. And you are listening, strangely enough, to the right side's audio, because on Series X, if you record using the Xbox DVR, it actually removes the audio from the game entirely. It scrubs it no matter what you record, no matter what settings you have. So that's kind of an interesting layering to it if you didn't know that. I thought it was just kind of cool. And it's just very interesting. Like, again, visually, very, very jagged, very rough on the eyes, no matter which version you're playing. It just ultimately having that smooth, high frame rate experience on Series X is a real treat, especially if you're a fan revisiting this title and you want to experience it, kind of in a new way, I guess you could say. It's fantastic to get basically the effects of an FPS boost just by putting it in the tray. You just get to experience that and have a good time with it. And, like some elements of it, I think hold up quite well. Obviously, a little rough on the eyes visually, but, I still think it could be a pretty good time for fans. And maybe even newcomers that are like, wow, this feels kind of like a modern game. And you could be like, yep, it definitely feels that way. May not look like it, but it definitely has that feeling. And I hope you enjoyed this tour looking at Grand Theft Auto 4. There's just a bit more of a walking sequence, so I hope you found this kind of helpful and a neat comparison between the two in general. Just kind of facing them off, because it's fun to do these things and seeing, how modern effects can actually improve older experiences.